On the night of their seventh birthday, two little girls in torn pink dresses huddled inside a tool shed, blowing out a single candle stuck into a piece of stale bread. Their father, Silas Hart, a battle-worn soldier, had just returned home, and what he saw shattered him more than any war. Beside him, Valor, his loyal German shepherd, bristled at the silence of a house that hid too many secrets. That was the moment Silas realized. The true battle wasn't overseas, it was here, inside his own home. Silas Hart had learned to enter houses the way he once entered hostile streets. Quiet, deliberate, prepared for truths that did not want to be found. He had been gone 6 months, wearing the uniform of a corporate contractor now instead of a soldier, but the instincts never left. That evening, returning without warning on his daughter's seventh birthday, he let himself in through the side gate. The main door, polished and flanked by lanterns, seemed too formal, too rehearsed. Valor, his German shepherd, padded ahead with a steadiness only years of service could teach. The scar along his left ear caught the porch light. His nose skimmed the gravel as if he already knew the path would not be straight. The house stood tall in Asheville's Blue Ridge air, white stone glowing faintly in the dusk. From behind it, Silas caught a faint glimmer through the seam of the tool shed door. Valor halted, body rigid, ears pricked. Silas followed, and when he eased the door open, the smell of cedar and dust met him. Inside, a cardboard box served as a table. A single slice of bread rested on a chipped saucer, a small pink candle burning crookedly in its center. Two girls leaned toward it, Lila and Lucy, his twins, identical except for a freckle on Lila's cheek blew together, the smoke curling upward like a whispered prayer. No cake, no banner, no voices but their own. Silas crouched, voice steady though his chest tightened. Lila. Lucy. They turned at once. Relief flickered, then faded as if they feared even joy might cost too much. Their dresses were pale imitations of pink, threadbare and creased, hair tangled, collars askew. Lucy clutched Valor when he moved toward her, burying her face in his fur, and the dog leaned his weight against her small frame, as though promising she was not alone. "What is this?" Silas asked softly. His eyes took in the details. The empty milk carton beside them, the wax dripping down stale bread, the way their shoulders tensed when the door creaked. Children should not brace for footsteps. "Practice," Lucy murmured. "We didn't want to wait." Before Silas could answer, the sharp click of heels cut the silence. Evangeline Shaw, his wife of 4 years, appeared at the doorway. Her beige silk dress shimmered under the dim light, her smile perfectly timed, as though she had stepped onto a stage. "Silas," she said brightly, "back early." What a surprise! Her eyes glanced at the bread, at the girls, then swept past as if rearranging the scene. "Darlings, I told you, the real party is after dinner." She bent gracefully, brushing a hand over Lucy's shoulder. "We have a lemon cake in the fridge. You'll love it." She plucked the bread from the saucer between two manicured fingers, tossed it into the trash by the door, and pinched the candle wick flat. Neither child protested. That silence was louder than any cry. Silas felt it lodge deep in his chest. Evangeline slipped her arm through his as if nothing were amiss. "Come inside. Everything's ready." Her perfume smelled of gardenia, precise and cool. She had been a comfort once, entering his life when grief for his late wife still bled. Competent, composed, endlessly organized. But tonight her poise carried the weight of theater, every smile a line rehearsed. As they entered the back hallway, Valor slowed, nose lifted. He halted beneath a wall sconce and staring up. Silas followed his gaze. A faint square of brighter paint marked the plaster, exactly where a camera might once have hung. No lens watched this corner now. Valor gave a short huff as if to confirm what his master already suspected. Something here had been erased. Dinner was set like an exhibit, silverware aligned, napkins folded with crisp triangles. Roast chicken gleamed under recessed lights, accompanied by salad and corn soup. Silas took the head of the table, Evangeline across from him, the girls beside him. He watched their posture, too straight, too cautious, as though waiting for inspection. Evangeline filled the silence with her smooth voice. She spoke of golf club luncheons, a meditation class that had changed her breath, plans for a school meeting. Each time Lila drew breath to speak, Evangeline's words swept over hers. Lucy twisted her spoon quietly, eyes lowered. Halfway through, Lucy's glass tipped. Water spread across the linen. Valor flinched at the sound. Silas reached to steady the glass, but his eyes caught something else. The faint red mark across Lila's upper arm, a bruise half hidden by her sleeve. "What happened here?" he asked, voice low but sharp. Lila shifted, hiding her arm behind her back. "I closed the door too fast." Evangeline leaned in, smoothing the girl's hair with perfect calm. "Yes, the laundry door. She nearly caught her arm. I put cream on it already. Nothing serious." Her tone was light, her smile unbroken. Silas nodded, but the list was already forming in his mind. The bread, the candle, the perfect showroom bedroom he had not yet seen, the missing camera, now the bruise. Evidence accumulated like stones in a river, altering the current beneath the surface. After dinner, the girls excused themselves at Evangeline's urging. Their footsteps faded up the stairs. Silas followed minutes later, Valor at his heel. The upstairs hallway felt unnaturally clean, air scented faintly of lavender oil. He opened the twins' room. It was immaculate. Beds made with military precision, pillows smooth, stuffed animals arranged in exact rows, books aligned like soldiers. Nothing of children lived here. No crayons spilled, no socks lost under beds, no scribbles on paper. He pressed a hand to a pillow, cool, untouched. The room was a display, not a home. "Perfect, isn't it?" Evangeline's voice carried from the door. She leaned against the frame, smiling with pride. "Structure makes them calm. I tidy every morning. They need stability." Silas turned to her. "Why were they in the shed?" Her expression did not falter. They were playing explorer. Twins invent secret clubs. They beg to try a candle before dinner. The real celebration is waiting. The explanation was tidy, polished, and false. Silas let it pass with a slow nod. Soldiers knew when to challenge and when to file suspicion away for later. Valor padded to the window seat, nose pressed against the glass, as though confirming the night outside was more honest than the perfection inside. Downstairs again, the house resumed its silence. In the tool shed, the candle had melted into a crooked lump, its smoke long gone. But in Silas's chest, the image burned bright, his daughters in torn dresses, wishing over dry bread. He reached down to Valor, scratching the scarred ear. "We're not done here," he whispered. The dog leaned into his touch, silent agreement. The next morning carried the same silence, but Silas no longer mistook it for peace. It was a silence curated, like polished marble concealing cracks. He woke early, Valor at the foot of his bed, the dog's breathing steady but his ears half raised as though listening to a language humans couldn't hear. Silas descended to the library, where a wall panel housed the estate's security system, a touchscreen layout of hallways, staircases, and doors. He scrolled through the feed. Cameras blinked alive in the kitchen, living room, front hall. Upstairs, however, the hallway outside the twins' room was empty. No angle, no view. He frowned and pressed deeper into the files. There it was, a program schedule. Every night between 8 and 10 p.m., 2 cameras on the second floor went dark, not malfunctioning, disabled by command. And the signature of the command, the client's request, Mrs. Evangeline Hart. A tightness spread through his chest, not rage yet, but something slower, heavier. He knew sabotage when he saw it. He had seen insurgents cut power grids, watch fellow soldiers die because shadows gave cover. This was the same tactic, wrapped in silk and civility. He tapped a code he remembered from his fieldwork. A micro camera one he kept from old contracts rested in his duffel. Unlike the system, it didn't connect to the house network. Only he and Valor would know. That evening, while the house prepared for dinner, he slipped quietly into the twins' room, Valor standing guard at the door. He tucked the microcam behind the carved molding of the bookshelf, angled toward the bed. It was a soldier's move. No announcement, no warning. Evidence before accusation. Later that night, he reviewed the recording on his laptop. Valor stretched at his feet. The grainy footage revealed a scene colder than anything he had prepared himself for. The door opened. Evangeline entered, silk robe whispering against her skin. She held a stack of drawings, crayon lines, children's shapes, bursts of color. "What is this?" Her voice was smooth, but her hands were tight. Lila's voice stammered, "It's just things I hoped for." Evangeline's smile hardened. She ripped the pages down the middle. "I told you, no drawings of me. No monsters. You think people will believe your scribbles? If you cry for help again, you'll learn what silence really is." She grabbed Lucy's wrist, pulling her toward the bathroom. Water thundered, cold and merciless. The child's muffled gasp filled the frame. Silas leaned back, jaw locked. Valor's ears pinned flat, a low growl humming in his throat. "I know, boy," Silas whispered, hand pressing into the dog's fur. "I know." The next day, he sought out Nora Alvarez, the housekeeper. Nora was 40, small-framed, with hair darkened by years of dye to cover gray. Her face carried lines not just of age, but of restraint, like someone who had learned to measure every word. She had been with the family since before Evangeline. Her accent marked her Mexican roots. She had once come to Asheville chasing work, leaving behind a son in El Paso. Silas found her folding linens in the laundry room, her hands precise but trembling faintly. "They slept in the shed, didn't they?" he asked. She froze, cloth clutched tight. "Sometimes," she admitted softly. "It was safer there. When the missus became angry, I thought it better to hide them." She would not meet his eyes, but her voice cracked. "They were children, Senor Hart. They needed rest, not punishment." Valor padded over to the corner of the laundry, nose pressed against the base of a cabinet. He pulled free a piece of fabric wedged under the wood. It was a child's wool scarf, damp and stiff with age, smelling faintly of mildew. Silas turned it over in his hands. "What happened?" Nora's shoulders sagged. "One winter night, they spilled water. She made them stand on the porch in their nightclothes. Hours. I tried to slip this scarf through the window, but they refused." Too afraid she would notice, Silas folded the scarf carefully, tucking it into his pocket. He looked at Nora, whose eyes brimmed with guilt. "You should have told me." She shook her head. "She threatened my family. Said she'd call immigration, invent lies. I was afraid." Silas knew fear used as a weapon. He'd seen it deployed across continents, watched enemies break villagers with whispers. Now he saw it in his own house. That night in the library, he called an old ally chief, Tom Winslow, Asheville's police chief. Tom was 50, tall, built thick like an oak, his face marked by the red of years in sun. He had been a high school football player once, before a knee injury ended his scholarship and nudged him toward law enforcement. He was steady, plain-spoken, the kind of man who wore his badge without theatrics. When Tom picked up, his voice was gravel, softened by humor. "Silas Hart, either you're buying me a beer or something's wrong." "It's wrong," Silas said. He explained the cameras, the footage, the threats. He spoke evenly, but each word felt like glass in his throat. "I need to know the process. If I bring you this evidence, can it hold?" Tom's silence stretched, then settled. "If what you're saying is true, it's more than evidence. It's a crime. But we do it right. Chain of custody, timestamp verification, unaltered files. Don't act rashly. You've been trained to wait for the right window." "I can't keep waiting," Silas muttered. "You can," Tom countered firmly. "Because if you go too soon, she'll twist it, and the kids will pay the price. Gather everything, then bring it. We'll make it stick." Silas ended the call, staring at Valor curled by the hearth. The dog lifted his head, amber eyes meeting his as if echoing Tom's warning. Silas nodded slowly. "We wait. But we don't stay still." He reached for the laptop again, pressing play. The microcam flickered alive, replaying the scene of his daughter's silence under Evangeline's shadow. This time Silas did not look away. The rain began as a thin mist drifting down from the Blue Ridge peaks and curling along the stone walls of the Hart estate. Silas sat in the library, laptop glowing faintly on the desk, the grainy footage replaying again and again, Evangeline's hand tearing through crayon drawings, her voice smooth as silk but sharp as glass. Valor lay at his side, chin on paws, eyes fixed on the screen as if he, too, bore witness. Silas knew evidence was not enough. He needed allies. That night he made a call. Avery McLean arrived the next morning. She was 36, African-American, her posture straight as a blade, her eyes sharp but carrying warmth at the edges. A child advocacy attorney in Asheville. Avery had grown up in Atlanta with a teacher mother and a father who worked 2 factory jobs. She had seen what silence did to children, having once been the kid who spoke up for a friend no one believed. That memory shaped her career. Every case was personal. She entered the library in a navy coat, hair cropped short, a leather briefcase at her side. Valor sniffed her, then sat by her chair as if already approving. Silas explained in measured tones. The recordings, Nora's testimony, the scarf, the bruises. Avery listened without interruption, scribbling in a notebook filled with color-coded tabs. When he finished, she leaned forward. We act in steps. First, get the girls out safely under a legitimate reason medical checkup works best. Then present unbroken evidence. Video files, Nora's sworn statement, the drawings, physical signs. It must be airtight. Evangeline will fight. She'll try to discredit them. We need to be faster and cleaner. Before they could move, Evangeline sensed the shift. She spent the day on the phone, her voice dripping concern. Silas overheard phrases like delusional behavior in violent drawings. She was speaking to a psychological rehabilitation center, trying to classify the twins as unstable. It was her counter-move, neat and vicious. Nora Alvarez became the linchpin. That evening, as drizzle thickened into rain, she used the emergency key she kept hidden in her apron pocket. Approaching the twins' room, she found them huddled on the bed, whispering to each other in tones too thin to carry. Come, Hijas, she urged softly. We go. Her own son's face flickered in her mind, the child she'd left behind years ago to work. Every time she saw Lila or Lucy punished, the wound of that separation reopened. Tonight she chose not to remain afraid. Valor led the way down the corridor, paws silent on the carpet. At the hallway's midpoint, Evangeline appeared, silk robe flowing, eyes narrowing. Where are you going? She demanded. Nora froze. In that split second, Valor surged forward, barking with a force that cracked the silence. He planted himself between the woman and the children, teeth bared but controlled, his growl reverberating off the walls. Evangeline stumbled back, startled, her hand clutching the doorframe. Nora seized the chance, guiding the girls through the back door into the wet night. Rain plastered their hair, soaked their thin dresses, but the twins clutched each other and followed. Valor stayed close, nudging them forward whenever their steps faltered. They crossed the garden, slipped out the service gate, and hurried through darkened streets until the glow of a small clapboard house appeared. Chief Tom Winslow opened the door in plain clothes, coffee mug in hand, his expression grave when he saw them. Inside, warmth replaced the cold. Tom wrapped blankets around the girls, noting the pallor in their faces, the way their shoulders hunched at sudden sounds. They're safe here, he told Silas, who had followed minutes later, drenched but unshaken. And for the record, this isn't kidnapping. This is protection under their father's consent. He began documenting their condition, his notes firm and methodical. The girls clung to Valor, burying their faces in his thick fur as if he were the only stable ground they knew. Silas watched, something heavy breaking inside him, but also something steady forming. Avery, standing near the door, met his gaze. This is where we stop being silent, she said quietly. The courthouse in downtown Asheville carried the solemn air of old brick and polished oak, its walls heavy with the weight of too many stories of hurt and repair. On that morning, Silas walked through its double doors in a gray suit that still felt foreign to his frame. Years of combat boots and fatigues had shaped his posture into a soldier's stance, but today he carried himself not as a fighter, but as a father. Valor patted at his side until the bailiff gently reminded him, dogs were not permitted. Exceptions were made only for service animals. Silas argued briefly, then produced the papers. Valor had been certified as his emotional support partner during deployment. The judge permitted it with a nod, and Valor lay quietly near Silas's chair, his eyes watchful, his presence grounding. Across the aisle sat Evangeline Shaw. She was dressed in a black-fitted dress, her hair coiled into a perfect knot, her lips painted crimson. To strangers, she looked composed, even fragile, but Silas knew better. She carried her past like a sharpened blade. Her attorney, Richard Keene, was a man in his late 50s, tall with a hawk's nose and a reputation for turning sympathy into strategy. He whispered to her constantly, shaping her words before they ever reached the air. The hearing began with Evangeline's testimony. She spoke softly, her tone full of trembling sincerity. "I was raised in hardship," she said. "My own mother locked me in the basement when I was disobedient. I only believed discipline could make children stronger. If I erred, it was out of love. I never meant harm." She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, and her attorney nodded as if pain could be polished into innocence. Avery McLean rose from her seat. In her navy blazer and white blouse, she looked calm, but her voice carried steel. She presented a sequence of events, each piece of evidence like a bead threaded into a chain too strong to break. The timed shutdowns of the cameras, the recordings from Silas's microcam showing drawings torn and children threatened, Nora Alvarez's sworn statement, the damp scarf found under the cabinet, the bruises on Lila's arm noted by Chief Winslow, the children's silence recorded in their own voices. "This is not discipline," Avery concluded. "It is control. It is calculated isolation. It is psychological abuse repeated night after night." The judge, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Whitfield, listened intently. Her silver hair framed a face lined by years of balancing law with compassion. She had once been a foster parent herself, and though she never revealed it on the bench, her decisions were shaped by memories of children who hid behind silence. She asked pointed questions. Why was Maggie's, now Lila and Lucy's, bedroom untouched? Too perfect for real life. Why did Evangeline request the second-floor cameras be disabled? Why did the girls seek refuge in a tool shed on their own birthday? Evangeline faltered, her answers rehearsed, but cracking at the edges. When Silas took the stand, he did not try to polish his words. His voice was gravel, plain, unembellished. "I failed them," he admitted. "I thought providing money, a roof, food, that was enough. I thought marrying a woman who seemed steady would fill the gap their mother's death left. But I was wrong. While I was away working, my daughters lived in fear. I wasn't here to stop it. But I am here now, and I will not leave again." The room was silent for a moment. Even Valor seemed to sense the gravity, lifting his head, amber eyes fixed on his master. In the observation room behind the glass, Lila and Lucy sat side by side with a child psychologist. They watched their father's image on the monitor. When he said, "I will not leave again," the twins leaned into each other, their shoulders touching. Valor, sensing the shift, settled back down at Silas's feet, breathing slow and steady, a quiet oath embodied. The judge deliberated, then delivered her decision. Temporary custody of Lila and Lucy Hart is granted to their father, Silas Hart. Child Protective Services will maintain oversight to ensure the children's welfare. Evangeline Shaw is remanded into custody, pending further investigation on charges of endangerment and emotional abuse. Her gavel fell, a sound like a door closing and another opening. Silas exhaled, not in triumph, but in something closer to grief and relief woven together. Avery placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, her eyes telling him the fight was not over, but the tide had turned. In the observation room, the twins allowed themselves their first real smiles in months, faint but undeniable. And though the road ahead would be long, the courtroom that day marked the first mile of a journey toward healing. The apartment near Forest Hill Park was modest, a two-bedroom space with peeling paint along the balcony rail and hardwood floors that creaked under every step. But to Silas Hart, it felt like the first honest place he had lived in years. Gone were the cold hallways of the estate. Gone the polished marble that seemed built to hide. Here, windows opened to the sound of children playing in the park below, and on Saturday mornings the smell of bread drifted from the bakery on the corner. For the twins, Lila and Lucy, the change felt like an exhale they had been holding too long. Their new bedroom walls quickly became a canvas for freedom paper, taped side by side, crayon and watercolor spilling into shapes of mountains, blue skies, and a German shepherd always sprinting ahead. Valor thrived here too. No longer confined to the quiet corners of a mansion, he ran with the girls in the park, ears back, paws pounding earth, his bark echoing like a hymn of belonging. Neighbors soon knew him as well as the children, the scarred-eared shepherd who guarded them fiercely but melted at the offer of a biscuit. Silas often watched from the bench, his posture softer now, the soldier's vigilance blending with something steadier, domestic patience. But Silas was not content to only rebuild at home. The images of his daughter's fear, of children silenced by threats, stayed with him. With the help of Avery McLean, he registered a small nonprofit, the Heart and Valor Foundation. Its mission was twofold: support children recovering from abuse and connect retired service dogs with veterans who had lost their footing in civilian life. The office was nothing more than a donated corner of a community center, a desk, a phone line, and a bulletin board filled with flyers. Yet already it was drawing attention. Veterans came, shoulders heavy but eyes brightening when paired with a dog. Children came too, some with foster parents, some with caseworkers, their drawings pinned proudly beside Lila and Lucy's. At home, Silas began a project of his own: baking. He had never learned, never needed to, but now he stood in the small kitchen, night after night, sleeves rolled, flour streaked across his forearms. He burned the first cakes, flattened the second, misread the sugar measurement on the third. But the fourth rose golden, and even if it leaned to one side, it carried a sweetness that made the girls laugh. "You'll get it, Dad," Lucy encouraged, tugging Valor's ears while he sniffed at the cooling rack. By late spring, the 8th birthday arrived. Silas had planned carefully. He invited a few friends from the community center: Nora Alvarez, who now worked part-time at the bakery down the street, Avery with her ever-present briefcase, but softer smile. Balloons filled the small living room, handwritten invitations taped to the wall. On the table stood a cake Silas had baked himself: white frosting, fresh strawberries, sprigs of mint. But at its center stood something older, the same pink candle once pressed into stale bread. Silas had saved it, cleaned the wax, and set it upright. It was no longer a symbol of sorrow, but of survival. When the lights dimmed, everyone gathered close. Silas placed a hand on each daughter's shoulder. "Ready?" he asked. Lila and Lucy exchanged a glance, then nodded. Together they leaned forward and with one breath extinguished the flame. Smoke curled upward, not like a prayer unanswered, but like a curtain lifting on a new stage. The room erupted in cheers, Valor barking along, tail thumping the floor in rhythm. After cake came gifts: a pink bicycle from Avery, sketch pads from Nora, and from Silas, a simple locket each, engraved with their initials. "So you never forget who you are," he said. The girls hugged him so tightly his suit shirt wrinkled beyond repair. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Silas walked with them to the park. The girls pedaled their bicycles along the grassy path, laughter carrying into the amber sky. Valor ran beside them, body a streak of muscle and loyalty, darting ahead then circling back. Silas followed at a slower pace, hands in his pockets, eyes steady on the trio in front of him. It was not triumph he felt, but something deeper: the quiet knowledge that apologies mean little unless lived out, and that fatherhood, like baking, was messy but worth every mistake if done with love. Behind them, the old candle rested in a kitchen drawer, not as a relic of pain, but as a reminder of a vow kept. Ahead of them stretched a horizon painted in crayon colors: blue skies, green hills, and always Valor leading the way. And so this story closes not with shadows, but with light. A father learned that love is not proven by wealth, but by presence. Two daughters discovered that their voices matter, and that silence can finally give way to laughter. And a loyal dog, Valor, reminded us all that sometimes courage has four paws. What about you? Have you ever witnessed or lived through a moment when love, loyalty, or courage turned the tide? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your story. If this journey moved you, please take a moment to like the video, follow and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. Your support helps these voices continue to be heard.